Well, Muslims treat others like shit. Muslims are totally racist.
It was Ramadan, and I ended up breaking my fast and having a Coke. I was like, yeah, Adrian, you're done.
I was praying, but my prayers weren't answered.
If a religion teaches you to kill a soul, a person, innocently, without a reason, you will see that there is something wrong with Islam.
Hello and welcome. As a sociologist and not a theologian, I'm interested in understanding why do people leave Islam and what are their reasons. Islam may be the fastest growing religion in the world, which means more and more people become Muslim or identify as Muslim. But if you look at the statistics, less and less of these people who identify as Muslim actually practice the religion. Just like with Christians who identify as Christian but do not practice Christianity. You've probably read some of my published studies about conversion, reversion. You've probably read articles such as I'm Done with Islam, or you have perhaps read books such as Moving in and Out of Islam, to which I have contributed. Leaving Islam, just like embracing it, is not a single event. It's usually a very long process, for which there might be a trigger or a catalyst event, which means a reason among others, which is a bit stronger that pushes people to leave. There is very little work done about why do people leave Islam. I mean, some of it is in this book. One good source is one video produced by ex-Muslims of North America. They state that the major reason why people leave and what they give in their polls is because they find an incompatibility between Islam and science, find contradictions in the text or religious principles, which makes me guess that a lot of these polled people might be agnostic now or atheist. But the second most important factor, which is for a sociological point of view very important for me, is a lot of people leave because they have been facing abuse, violence or peer pressure from other Muslims. If you listen to a lot of the testimonies online, you will realize that they find the text or the principles contradictory. The Quran simply doesn't make sense to them.
One of the things that disturbed me most was the concept of eternal torture. It is said that the mercy of God is for everyone in this life, but only for believers in the next life.
The reason I truly left was because qadar or predestination, because if God knows that I, for example, am going to hell, then why would he make me? We have always been told that God is merciful. A merciful God does not create evil.
Islamic texts lend themselves to contradictory interpretations.
I also had a big problem with the story of Dhul-Qarnayn, how Dhul-Qarnayn, he trapped this tribe of people behind a giant gate. And I was wondering, where is this place? How come we can't find it? We have Google Earth and all that, and how come we can't find it?
It did not add up and it did not make sense, especially for me as a woman.
I don't really think that there is one specific way that we're supposed to live our lives and that's it. Everybody else is just excluded.
And fair enough, it would be ridiculous for people to follow something that doesn't make sense to them, especially since the very first word of the Quranic revelation was Iqra, read, use your critical thinking. There's no compulsion in a religion. You can't force people to believe if it doesn't make sense to them. More on that in a second. Some other people just do not believe in God.
I wasn't able to have any sort of philosophical discussions that did not eventually lead to Islam. This meant I could never truly open up to them about the fact that I didn't particularly believe in the religion.
In my opinion, all religions are man-made. Every night I begged God to heal my son, just as I had begged him to heal my daughter Huda before she died. But once again, my prayers fell on deaf ears.
Is there any evidence in favor of Allah?
Came to the realization that, okay, we don't really need God.
Belief is an intimate process. You can't force or convince someone to believe or not to believe. And when I say it's intimate, it's because it doesn't necessarily answer to logic. For some people it's emotional, or vice versa. For some people it's logic, not emotional. Now in 2024 there is still people who believe that the earth is flat despite an overwhelming body of evidence. So even if they were presented with any empirical proofs of the existence of God or his non-existence, you just cannot convince people. People can transmit the message, they can share arguments, but ultimately how they interpret them, what they do with these arguments or this message is not in our control. Some people even get convinced by other religions because, again, people have different sensitivities, they have different social circles, they have different access to knowledge. Maybe they have more books about one religion than another.
Now, my grandmother, she was Christian, so she didn't care that I was a Muslim. She dragged me to church with her.
And one day I called a friend of mine, and we grew up since age 6. Jesus, he died for your sin that you have everlasting life. When he told me that sentence, every lie that Islam till that moment was telling me was exposed in front of my eyes.
And then I decided to read the Bible. Jesus, who is God in the flesh, came into this world and gives us this assurance that he is going to take us back.
A lot of people leave because through their reading they find Islam violent, barbaric or immoral.
Intolerance. Well, you're supposed to be stoned to death. There is an inherent violence in not all, of course, but a lot of Muslim societies.
As shocking as it may seem, both the Quran and Muhammad teach that it's permissible, halal, to capture and rape female war captives.
Or because your God is different from Allah, you're hellbound.
There is no concrete salvation for women in the Quran.
If, like me, you've read the Quran from a skeptical or a critical lens, you know that many of these statements come from either very bad translations of the Quran verses taken out of context. First time I read the Quran, it was one of the early French translations. And then, maybe 10 years later, I eventually read this Quran, which has been published by Oxford University Press, and which has been the result of years and years of work on these translations. And to me, they appeared as two completely different Qurans. You even have ex-Muslims who agree that the Quran, in some of the verses, is nothing like what these people describe.
Because there certainly are peaceful passages in the Quran, because there's no compulsion in religion. Chapter 109, which says, those of you who disbelieve, believe whatever you want and let us believe what we want. Chapter 5, verse 32 of the Quran, which says, if you kill one person, it says if you kill all of mankind. And if you save a life, it says if you save all of mankind.
And finally, one of the most important reasons for me is some people leave because of how other Muslims treat them or treat other people.
I grew up fighting kids on the street. I grew up being beaten up by my dad, who himself got beaten up by his dad.
He was a grown, able-bodied man. Nothing was wrong with him. It's just like, wait, so I'm supposed to financially support you? No. We're not doing that.
I remember days of crying while trying to learn Arabic. While I was at the school, I was being bullied by certain people, and I felt like such a prisoner. And so I realized that if I want to be happy, I cannot follow the path of my father.
Yeah. The moment I converted, people were talking about getting me married.
Right.
The moment.
It just made me angry. I was just like, this is so dumb. Like, you got people who are born into Islam feeling superior than people who've converted as if they had a more valid experience.
Yeah.
It's like converts go through almost sometimes worse stuff.
Yeah. For women, it's like, okay, you've taken your shahada. Now, next step, getting married. It's kind of a joke that like, you took your shahada on a Friday, you need to be getting married the following Friday.
While my family did not evict me, they did treat me like a stranger in my own home, which was in many ways worse.
The thing is, I have met a few ex-Muslims, so people who were either embraced Islam or who were born Muslim and later left. And I have to say that I have a lot of empathy for these ex-Muslims, especially those who were pushed away because they have been treated very badly. And that's because I went through the same thing. My ex-wife, the first person I ever married, she used to wear the hijab, pray 5 times a day, her fard, sunnah, nafil. She used to fast on Mondays and Thursdays, do tahajjud every night. But it was 5 years of a very abusive marriage. She would hit me, insult me, belittle me, gaslight me. She eventually fell in love with someone else. So on the outside, she was the perfect Muslim. But for my mom, because we used to live at my mom's, she was another proof that Islam is a horrible religion and Muslims are just barbaric people. My mom doesn't have an education. She works as a cashier and she grew up on a farm. And she believes everything the media tells her. So she could not make the difference. She could not know that what my ex-wife used to do was actually against Islam. So think about it. If people hurt you continuously, and they are the only people around you who represent Islam, and sometimes they would justify their actions with the religion, you really, really want to stay away from anything that reminds you of them.
I tried, part of me tried. I tried to go to several different Sunni masjids in my area and actually found quite a lot of discrimination against me. I started to think, well, this is how Muslims really are.
So if you know a thing or two about psychology, this is a trauma response. You may say that, you don't embrace Islam for people, you embrace Islam for God, but when it comes to things like PTSD, it doesn't respond to logic anymore. It is a survival instinct that kicks in. Anything that reminds people of their bad treatment, they stay away from it. And even for some, it means leaving Islam and staying away from anything that represents Islam because they associate this with the Muslims that have abused them. You have the study of Mona al-Idrisi, which specifically talks about this, and that's why many of us leave. But one question is, why do these ex-Muslims are so vocal online? Well, some people are well-intentioned. The first reason is because they want to support other ex-Muslims. It is very difficult for people born into a Muslim family to openly leave Islam. Because some people just, they identify as Muslim, but they don't really believe in God or anything. But it's different to say it openly, because it can have severe repercussions on them personally and their families, especially in cultures where honor is a very strong factor. And this is why many parents would deny their kids to be on an explorative journey about their beliefs. The second reason is because it's an act of rebellion against the system. Because in some countries, as I mentioned, you can face severe consequences for leaving Islam openly. And therefore, people want to rebel against this, to denounce this lack of freedom, because people should be able to choose whatever they want to believe in without being persecuted.
This doesn't mean I hate Muslims. Quite the contrary, I feel enormous empathy towards them. And I know that most believers are peaceful and good. And I know that religion brings a great deal of comfort to millions. But although I'm not against religion, I do call for the non-interference of religion in the life of an individual, and for freedom of thought and freedom of conscience, and the right of a person to choose what he believes and doesn't believe without punishments, threats, or pressure.
The third reason is because some people want to save others. They think that their belief system is the truth and any other thing is harming people. They just want to call people to their version of the truth.
I don't actually hate Muslim people. I love you guys. I love Muslim people. And so for me, I actually don't have any sort of hatred. I actually have a love for Muslim people. I have a love that's the love that Christ has for you guys, because I want you to know the truth. I want you to be able to seek the truth.
They won't try to destroy actively others. And if you've been long enough on YouTube, you know that there is a sea of content which is, anti-Jew, anti-Christian, anti-atheist, anti-Buddhist, and anti-anything, you can find it. But since 9/11, this is my fourth reason, there is some people with an obsession with bashing Muslims or Islam. And actually, they have very good reason to do so. Because since 9/11, anti-Muslim and anti-Islam narratives have become part of a very lucrative industry in which you could make a lot of money and make a whole career out of it. Well, maybe less now. And the people who actually are able to make a living out of it are maybe less than 1% of all these ex-Muslims. Because I met a few Muslims, and I have interviewed them, people who have become very vocal against Islam. And even if they don't believe what they say, but the reason is because it gives them job security. They have a family to feed, they have bills to pay. In my cohort, when I was a master's student, there would be some people who identify as Muslim, but who would study Islam from the perspective of terrorism, because they knew that at the end of their studies, they would be given a stable job in the government. And why they're so popular in Europe or America? It's because, for most people who belong to an European or American Christian culture, it's comforting to see people coming from a Muslim background saying that no, Islam is wrong, and because it tells you that your European American Christian culture is the best. And to complicate things, in the era of social media, attention is the main currency. Many of the people who debate online against Islam, they know that antagonizing people, confrontational debates won't convince anyone. It won't make the world a better place. But what these debates will do is it will bring them views, it will bring them subscribers, it will bring them money, it will allow them to pay their bills. And this is a problem we see even in the Muslim Dawah scene. I made a video about Mohammed Hijab and why does his initiative Sapiens Institute is struggling. Because people don't care about Sapiens Institute. What they want to know is who he's going to fight next, because knowledge doesn't create dopamine hits. And the problem is, instead of building a map where people could just understand each other or seek knowledge, compare things, social media creates this antagonistic, binary, totalitarian, divisive narrative, meaning that people say, I have the truth, and you can only be either with me or against me. So what can we do? One of the best video advice I have found online is done by Maliki Click, because his son left Islam a few years ago. And I think that this video is a true lesson about the concept of rahmah, the mercy for others, and understanding and letting people be on their own journey.
They see you abusing people with their mouth. Guess what? They're not going to see having manners is important. They're going to have a very hard time believing themselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Oh Muhammad, if you would have been harsh with them, they would have abandoned you." So what I would say is to be very, very open. I would be very, very merciful with her. And I would also ask her the questions. Why do you feel alone in your religion? Why do you feel despair? Why do you feel that there's doubts? So the wrong way to go about this is to chastise them for not believing. We have to be the ones that are well versed in our own religion.
If you guys have read the Quran before, which I highly encourage you and I highly suggest that you do, because a lot of people, myself included, when you are grow up in Islam and you are a Muslim, actually reading the Quran is something that you would think that they would do, and you memorize it, but you actually don't read it and understand the content and the context and the history and the book itself.
Open the book on your own, read it thoroughly, and make notes, my friend.
Many of these ex-Muslims, they just basically hold a mirror to many Muslims in the world on how some people present their religion, some people behave. Because sadly, human beings rely on face-to-face interactions. If you're an atheist, a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a Buddhist, a Hindu, when people meet you, people will subconsciously associate you as an ambassador for your beliefs. And my philosophy is simple. If you're a Muslim, be a good Muslim, study your religion. If you're a Christian, be a good Christian, study your religion, do your research. If you are an atheist, be a good atheist. Are you a mercy for those around you and for the earth, or are you causing harm? And these are the fundamentals of most moral systems in the world. I hope this video was useful. Thank you for watching, and again, take care of yourselves and each other.